Welcome. This is How Beautiful by Twyla Paris, arranged by Larry Shackley. This is You Are My All in All by Dennis Jernigan, arranged by Larry Shackley. This is In the Garden by C. Austin Miles, arranged by Carol Tornquist. This last one is Via Dolorosa by Billy Sprague and Niles Borup, arranged by Carol Tornquist.
On this most solemn of days, we gather here as disciples of Christ to worship and to remember the shadows that came over the life of our Savior in Jerusalem during the day that we now call Good Friday. Welcome, brothers and sisters from Rumple, and also from Fairview and United Presbyterian Churches in Lenore. I am joined in worship today by my colleagues Dave and Eric, a part of the music staff here at Rumple, and by my husband, the Reverend Lance Perry, who is the interim pastor at Fairview and United. A copy of the bulletin for this service can be found on the Rumple Church website, rumplechurch.org. If you go to the Sundays tab and then Bulletins and then look for the Good Friday Bulletin, you can follow along with the liturgy for this service. Our Good Friday worship today is a service of tenebrae, so it is intentionally a little bit darker in this space than normal. Tenebrae is Latin for shadows or darkness. This is a quiet and contemplative service, offering time for reflection and meditation. After each reading, the reader will pause and then we will be invited to sing a response together. And then the reader will extinguish a candle representing another shadow. And then we will wait a minute in silence. Near the end of the service, after the final candle has been extinguished, the Christ candle will also be removed from the worship space to represent Jesus being sealed in the tomb. But it will return because we know that Easter is coming. May God's Spirit move in and through us today as we make this Good Friday journey with Jesus in what feels like a very heavy time in our world. We hope that this story will speak to us and stir in us. Let us prepare to join in the story of Good Friday as the tenebrae candles are lit. May we breathe deeply of God's Spirit and prepare to worship together. Will you join me in our responsive call to worship? Blessed be the name of the Lord our God, who redeems us from sin and death. For us and for our salvation, Christ became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Our hymn is When I Survey the Wondrous Cross.
His blood.
amazing, so divine. Demons, my soul, my life, my all. In our prayers of confession, we are honest with God. It's good for us on this Good Friday to name when we too betray Jesus, deny him, and mock him as we do not love those on the margins whom he loved. So let us join together now and confess our sin. Merciful God, you gave your Son to suffer the shame of the cross. Save us from hardness of heart, that seeing him who died for us, we may repent, confess our sin, and receive your overflowing love. Eternal God, you are the power behind the cross of Christ, behind the weakness, the torture, and death, behind the unconquerable love. Even as we recall the crucifixion here today, so prepare us again for the joy of the resurrection, and help us to live in sacrificial love as Jesus taught us. Friends, believe the good news of the gospel. In Jesus Christ, you are forgiven. Thanks be to God.
As each reading is completed in this service of Tenebrae, this service of shadows, we will sing together a response. And we will sing it now together before we begin the readings.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
The shadow of betrayal. That evening he took his place at the table with the 12 disciples. As they were eating, he said, "I assure you that one of you will betray me." Deeply saddened, each one said to him, "I'm not the one, Lord, am I?" He replied, "The one who will betray me is the one who dips his hand with me into this bowl. The human one goes to his death just as it is written about him. But how terrible it is for that person who betrays the human one. It would have been better for him if he had never been born." Now Judas, who would betray him, replied, "It's not me, is it, Rabbi?" And Jesus answered, "You said it."
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. The shadow of desertion. Then after singing songs of praise, they went to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Tonight you will all fall away because of me. This is because it is written, I will hit the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will go off in all directions. But after I'm raised up, I'll go before you to Galilee." Peter replied, "If everyone else stumbles because of you, I'll never stumble." Jesus said to him, "I assure you that before the rooster crows tonight, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said, even if I must die alongside you, I won't deny you. All the disciples said the same thing.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to the disciples, "Stay here while I go and pray over there." When he took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, he began to feel sad and anxious. Then he said to them, "I'm very sad. It's as if I'm dying. Stay here and keep alert with me." Then he went a short distance farther and fell on his face and prayed, "My Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want." He came back to the disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you stay alert 1 hour with me? Stay alert and pray so that you won't give in to temptation. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak." A second time he went away and prayed, "My Father, if it's not possible that this cup be taken away unless I drink it, then let it be what you want." Again he came and found them sleeping. Their eyes were heavy with sleep. But he left them again and went and prayed the same words for the 3rd time. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Will you sleep and rest all night? Look, the time has come for the human one to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Look, here comes my betrayer."
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
The shadow of accusation. Suddenly, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came with a mob carrying swords and clubs. They'd been sent by the chief priests, legal experts, and elders. His betrayer had given them a sign: "Arrest the man I kiss and take him away under guard." As soon as he got there, Judas said to Jesus, "Rabbi." Then he kissed him. Then they came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of the bystanders drew a sword and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his ear. Jesus responded, "Have you come with swords and clubs to arrest me like an outlaw? Day after day I was with you, teaching in the temple, but you didn't arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And all his disciples left him and ran away. One young man, a disciple, was wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They grabbed him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked. They led Jesus away to the high priest, and all the chief priests, elders, and legal experts gathered. Peter followed him from a distance, right into the high priest's courtyard. He was sitting with the guards, warming himself by the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for testimony against Jesus in order to put him to death, but they couldn't find any. Many brought false testimony against him, but they contradicted each other. Some stood to offer false witness against him, saying, "We heard him saying, 'I will destroy this temple constructed by humans, and within 3 days I will build another, one not made by humans.'" But their testimonies didn't agree even on this point. Then the high priest stood up in the middle of the gathering and examined Jesus. Aren't you going to respond to the testimony these people have brought against you? But Jesus was silent and didn't answer. Again, the high priest asked, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? Jesus said, I am. And you will see the human one sitting on the right side of the Almighty and coming on the heavenly clouds. Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, Why do we need any more witnesses? You've heard his insult against God. What do you think? They all condemned him. He deserves to die. Some began to spit on him. Some covered his face and hit him, saying, Prophesy. Then the guards took him and beat him.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
The governor's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's house, and they gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a red military coat on him. They twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They put a stick in his right hand. Then they bowed down in front of him and mocked him, saying, Hey, King of the Jews! After they spit on him, they took the stick and struck his head again and again. When they finished mocking him, they stripped him of the military coat and put his own clothes back on him. They led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they found Simon, a man from Cyrene, and they forced him to carry his cross. When they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the skull, they gave Jesus wine mixed with vinegar to drink. But after tasting it, he didn't want to drink it. After they crucified him, they divided up his clothes among them by drawing lots. They sat there guarding him. They placed above his head the charge against him. It read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. They crucified him with two outlaws, one on his right side and one on his left.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
It was now about noon, and darkness covered the whole earth until about 3 o'clock, while the sun stopped shining. Then the curtain in the sanctuary tore down the middle. Crying out in a loud voice, Jesus said, Father, into your hands I entrust my life. After he said this, he breathed for the last time. When the centurion saw what happened, he praised God, saying, It's really true. This man was righteous. All the crowds who had come together to see this event returned to their homes, beating their chests after seeing what had happened. And everyone who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance observing these things.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
The shadow of the tomb. After this, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate if he could take away the body of Jesus. Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but a secret one because he feared the Jewish authorities. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and took the body away. Nicodemus, the one who at first had come to Jesus at night, was there too. He brought a mixture of myrrh and aloe, nearly 75 pounds in all. Following Jewish burial customs, they took Jesus' body and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths. There was a garden in the place where Jesus was crucified, and in the garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish preparation day and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus in it.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
The suffering servant. It was certainly our sickness that he carried and our sufferings that he bore, but we thought him afflicted, struck down by God, and tormented. He was pierced because of our rebellions and crushed because of our crimes. He bore the punishment that made us whole. By his wounds we are healed.
The hymn is "Were You There?"